Hey everyone, welcome back to the Fish Keepers. Today I'm going to be giving you a basic overview of how to take care of goldfish. Now, goldfish are commonly mistreated fish in the hobby, and because of that they end up in small bowls that are way too small for them. I'm going to give you a history of the fish and what you can do to take better care of your fish and the minimum requirements for a tank. Let's get started. Goldfish are from China and have been domestically bred for a long time. Because of this, they're so far away, like genetically speaking, from their distant carp ancestors that they can't be really reintroduced to the wild, and there's no wild variants of goldfish. So because of this, they don't have any real natural competition in the wild, so you never want to release your goldfish. Here's a picture right now. These things get massive when they're in the wild, and they completely destroy their local environments. Back when the Chinese were doing this thousands of years ago, they kept goldfish in large ponds, and they display them when visitors arrive. They display them in smaller containers so they can see how epic the fish looks. This could be where the misconception where it's okay for them to be in small tanks comes from. Because the Chinese display them on small tanks, the Europeans, when they arrived, they assumed that you could keep them in these smaller tanks because that's what the Chinese seem to be doing. Samuel Pepys, a English diarist and naval administrator, claimed that keeping these in small containers would be exceedingly fine. This could be where the misconception you can keep them in small bowls comes from. They diffused into Europe through Portugal, where they eventually became a common household pet. These are the parameters that the goldfish like to live at. They like a temperature of 68 to 74 degrees Fahrenheit, but you'd be probably okay a little lower than that or a little higher than that. So because of this, you may not need a heater to get to the right temperature for these fish, and I would still recommend getting one. Having heaters is another defense in case it gets too cold in your house, then the goldfish doesn't freeze. Shibukins or comets can be lower temperatures, maybe 60 to 70 degrees instead of 68 to 74, and this is because they are commonly kept in ponds. I recommend pH of 7.0 to 8.4, so that's neutral to a little higher. They'd probably be great in anything like that, but again, they're a relatively hardy fish, so whatever you get from your tap will probably be okay. Still make sure to add dechlorinator. They like KH between 70 and 144 parts per million, or 3.9 to 7.9 DKH. Goldfish are pretty hardy fish, which is why you can keep them in these small containers and they seem okay, so I still recommend being within these parameters. What should your tank look like? Now, again, I've been saying this whole video that you don't want to keep them in these little bowls, you want to keep them in large aquariums. Well, how large is large? I would probably say minimum size of 40 gallons. On the internet, a lot of places say 20 gallons, 30 gallons is okay, but really these things get pretty large, and I think they appreciate having a lot of space to swim around, so I'd probably say that's a good minimum. Again, you could probably do lower sizes, but 40 is a great number to shoot for. And if you have a smaller aquarium, like 10 gallons, 20 gallons, probably too low again, but still, I would recommend doing more frequent water changes. Actually, you would have to do more frequent water changes to keep up with it. Smaller variants of goldfish may do okay in these smaller tanks, like veil tails or pearl scales may do good in a 20-gallon aquarium. I would suggest from that 40 base having an additional 5 gallons to every new fish. So in a 55-gallon, I'd probably only have 3 goldfish, 4 goldfish. It's really these fish produce a lot of waste, so it's really important they have enough space, or you do a lot of water changes. A bit of misconception is that larger tanks are harder. Larger tanks are easier. Like this big old 120-gallon aquarium behind me is a lot less work than this in the 29. This one, the parameters change a lot. So ammonia spikes easily, pH spikes easily, but in this tank, I could do a 10-gallon water change, the fish wouldn't even notice. So if the heater turns off for an hour, this thing you'll notice. You'll notice that the heat goes down, but if this thing heat turns off for an hour, you might not even notice the temperature drop more than a degree or two. Because there's so much water, any changes to ammonia or nitrate or nitrite or any waste buildup in the aquarium will simply be less noticeable. No real harm in having a larger tank other than it costs more upfront. It'll save you time and effort in the future. Low flow is ideal. You want very little flow in the tank, and it should be a very small flow. In the 50-gallon, we have just one pearl scale goldfish right now. We'll probably add more to it in the future. That tank is set up on a sump, so there needs to be a little bit more flow, but the fish is okay because there's a very small amount of it. And importantly, the fish can escape from the flow. If the fish doesn't want to be pushed around a little bit in the flow, they can just go out of the way of it. So make sure that if you do have a larger flow, like in the 50-gallon, that the fish has places to escape. There are parts of the aquarium that have low flow. I like to say minimalistic is better. The least amount of decorations you can have in there is probably the best, so you don't damage the fish. I would suggest having a little bit of something, some kind of something that a fish can hide behind just in case, or something that the fish can feel secure with. But other than that, it really doesn't have to be very crazy. In the 50-gallon, we just have some fake plants and a couple of rocks, and that's more than enough really for a tank like this. The fish can hide from us if he wants to. I prefer live plants, but silk plants work as well. You want to avoid the plastic ones because again, they can damage your fish. Getting some silk plants or some live plants will do great and it won't hurt your fish. An issue with live plants, however, is that your goldfish may eat them. Live plants might get eaten and you might find bite marks in them because goldfish do eat plants. So be warned of that, but I still think that they look better than any artificial plants do. So I already mentioned my indoor pond and you've been seeing B-roll of it the entire time. But it's a pretty cool system actually. It's a 2 55-gallon troughs with a water bridge connecting the two of them. It's actually pretty awesome. What basically it is the suction of the water staying up there allows the fish to swim between these two ponds, so it's around a 110-gallon system. It's got a ton of filtration too. It has underground filters, it's got live plants, it's got sponge filters, it's got a bunch of filtration in it. It's a very, very clean system, and it's super easy to do water changes with our automatic water change system. For equipment, most lights will probably work. You're gonna grow live plants, make sure you have a strong enough light to do that. Because goldfish produce a lot of waste, you need a bigger filter. So in our 50-gallon aquarium, we've got a 10-gallon sump dedicated to filtration. Or in the troughs, we have a bunch of filtration from undergravel filters to sponge filters. These things really have way more filtration in them than they actually need. Goldfish, this is important, especially if you want to have bi-weekly water changes. You want to have as much filtration as possible. I would get a more powerful filter than the box recommends. If it recommends, say, a 25-gallon filter for 25 gallons, get the one that's recommended for 40 gallons. Just go one size up and you should be good. I would do this like for most tanks anyways, but I think for goldfish it's especially important. You can also add a heater, but a heater isn't going to do that much for you if you want to keep it at room temperature anyways, but it is a nice benefit. You can check my link in the description to get all these different products on my website. Different filters that I like and whatever are all available on my website. So goldfish will do good with any food mostly. They're not really picky eaters. You can feed them tropical fish food or goldfish food. I'd obviously recommend goldfish food. I've got a good option in the description box below. The last thing I want to talk about is water changes. This is an important step you do not want to overlook. You got to give your fish a lot of water changes. These guys produce a lot of waste, so because of that they need more water changes. We have an automatic system, but you don't need that. It's a relatively easy process to do. You can check out my video on it right here, and thanks for watching.